Hey there, welcome to Hobie on YouTube. Here's a new knife that I've purchased in the past year or so, and in trying to stick with American-made knives, it's a Buck knife. Buck is a fourth generation family-owned business here in the US, and since they moved their headquarters to Post Falls, Idaho several years ago from California, they've been making more and more of their product here in the US. They say they were established in 1902. I don't know how that could be because the original founder, Hoyt, and his son actually established the business in 1945. So 1902, maybe that's the year Hoyt made his first knife in his garage for himself. I don't know. But anyway, they've been around a long time. First it was Hoyt Buck, then his son Al Buck, and then his son Chuck Buck, and now it's CJ Buck who is the CEO of the company. And he seems like a pretty cool guy. At least he's doing some pretty cool things with their product lineup, and one of them is they're kind of modernizing, updating, some of their classics like the 110 Folding Hunter and the 112 Ranger. And what I have on the table here is a 112 Ranger Sport, which is the modern version of their 112 Classic. And I think they brought this out at the SHOT Show in January back in 2022. Okay, so let's take a look at it. I'll point out some of the differences between the Ranger Sport and the regular Ranger, and then I'll give you 5 things I like about it and 5 things I don't. So it does come in this nicer box. I remember that once upon a time, any Buck knife you got seemed to come in the same size, big, long yellow box, just kind of rattling around in there, maybe with its sheath. So this is kind of nice to see. It's a little sleeve, and then a box here that opens. It's here's that established in 1902. It comes in a nice little bag. I don't really know what the point of that is because it is a clip knife, a pocket clip knife, but then their package is kind of eco-friendly there. So I'm going to set all that aside and pull the knife out. And so, the story behind the Ranger is that it is basically just the smaller version of the 110 Folding Hunter. And the story goes that when they were making knives in California out near San Diego, they were selling a lot of their 110 Folding Hunters to the sailors on the big naval base there in San Diego. And that on a ship, 2 of the sailors got in a fight, and one of them used a 110 Hunter. And so the captain of that ship made a new rule that sailors couldn't carry knives over a certain blade length. And I guess that blade length was 3 inches because Rangers are 4 1/4 inches in the closed position with a 3-inch blade. And so basically what Buck did, I guess, is they just downsized their big 110 Folding Hunter so they could continue to sell knives to the Navy personnel after that restriction was put in place. But anyway, that's the story of the Ranger. It is, I think, a much more pocket-friendly size than the 110. The 110s are really not pocket knives. They're all sold with a leather sheath. I had one when I was younger. Me and all my buddies, that was one of the first knives that we bought, and we loved them. They're indestructible, but they're clunky and heavy and big, and I actually used it to backpack. So I don't know why I thought I needed to, every time I go backpacking, carry that big heavy knife with me. But I did, and I eventually lost it, so it's gone to the wind. But anyway, I wanted to try out their new modern version of the Ranger. And you can see right away some differences. But the main difference to me is instead of the brass frame, it's aluminum. It's black anodized aluminum. And that cuts the weight down substantially. The size is the same. This is 4 1/4 with a 3-inch blade, just like your regular Ranger. But instead of weighing 5.6 ounces like the regular Ranger, this one only weighs 3.9 ounces. And while that may not sound like a big difference, it is 40%. The regular Ranger is 40% heavier than this, and you feel it when you carry it, and you don't feel it when you carry this. So that's nice. The frame still is a centered frame, and again, it's just like one piece. That's not a separate liner and bolster. That's all one piece, just like the brass versions. Unlike the classic brass versions, you can see that it's not permanently pinned together. And so this was Buck listening to their customers. They said they wanted modern bolt and torque screw construction. So they've done that here. You can adjust the pivot. You can take the knife apart. You can purportedly take the scales off, the handles off. And so that's just a modern, updated way to make a knife. It is more expensive, and it has made the knife more expensive, and I'll talk about that. But that's an important update. The other thing that they've done is they've given it a thumb stud. It's a dual thumb stud, and it's a nitrite coated thumb stud, and it works quite well, although I'll probably fumble it here in the camera. But it's not a fast knife. It's not going to flip out. It's a very deliberate opening, and it's pretty much a two-handed closing affair because it is a lock back with the lock bar being disengaged here at the back of the knife. It's a very strong lockup, and that's one of the things I like about the knife that I'll talk about. The other thing they've done, in addition to the thumb stud, just to make it a pocket knife, one that doesn't need a sheath, is they've given it a pocket clip. And all in all, I like the pocket clip. They used to have these big, horrible-looking pocket clips they made them big so they could put a cutout of the buck anvil in them. But they gave up on that because they were just so fugly. So this is a much smaller, nicer pocket clip, fits the knife well, and it is deep carry. I do have some issues with it I'll talk about. So in addition to the aluminum frame and the torque screw construction, the thumb stud and the pocket clip, the other thing that makes this knife different is the blade steel. This one is made from S30V steel, so it's a little nicer steel. It's a modern steel. The regular 112 Rangers are 420 high carbon. Let's just see what we can see on the blade here. It's Boss heat treated, Paul Boss heat treated. There's your S30V. And over here it just says Buck 112 plus USA. So that's an important difference, and again that makes the price higher, and that's the final difference. This knife retails for $139.99, so $140, which I think is a bit much, particularly when you can buy a regular Ranger for $64.99. So $140 versus $65, that's more than twice as much. Now you can get it a little cheaper buying it from a big knife discounter, but Buck Knives is setting minimum prices now that their retailers can price the knives at. They can't go below, and it appears to be $134.99 for this knife. So you're not going to get this knife anywhere cheaper than $135. You might be able to use a coupon or a free shipping offer or something like that to get your costs down. Okay, so here are the 5 things I really like about the knife. I do like the size and the weight of the knife. It's not the slimmest or lightest knife you're ever going to get, but it is pocketable, and it's a big departure from your regular 112 and certainly the 110. I like the modern construction. I think that's pretty nice that Buck Knives is trying to respond to marketplace forces and the requests of their customers. So you've got modern materials and modern construction techniques. I like the better steel. I don't have any problem with Buck's regular steel, and their heat treating is supposedly among the best. But it's nice that they're offering something a little better than just your regular run-of-the-mill stainless steel. I just like the tank-like vibe this knife gives off. You get the sense that it's an extremely durable knife and that you're not going to be able to hurt it. Part of that, I think, is just the action and the lockup, and that would be the 5th thing I like about it. It's just very snicky. Is that the right word? The lockup is just, you're not going to fear that blade coming undone, but it is not hard to release. And I was just trying to shake it down there a little bit. It doesn't quite do that, but you're going to need 2 hands to close it. But just it's just got a good spring action. Haven't had any trouble with the blade wrapping down in here on anything, so that's not been a problem at all. It's firm, but it's easy enough to open. So definitely like the action and the lockup. Okay, here are 5 things I do not like about the knife. Number 1 is this poor looking micarta. Now, I do like the fact that they're using micarta, and they're using actually brand name micarta. You know, micarta is kind of like Kleenex. Not every tissue is a Kleenex. Not every cloth laminate is micarta, even though most knife companies will say they've got micarta, whatever. This is genuine micarta from the company that makes micarta. But what an ugly piece of micarta that is. Here on the back, it's much better. See? But on the front, it's like it's way too much resin or something. And you know, I've heard that, oh, you handle that, you know, in your hand oil and everything, it's going to change color and darken and all that. I've been carrying this knife for quite a while, and I don't see any difference. As a matter of fact, I've tried to oil this a few times with different things, mineral oil and everything, to get a more consistent, less mottled look out of that piece of micarta, and I just can't do it. And that brings me to the second thing that I don't like about the knife. I thought, well, I can't oil these or get them to change color. So what I'll do is I'll take this cover off and I'll sand it down a little bit, see if that helps. Well, the first torque screw that I tried to remove stripped out on me. I mean, they are so tiny and they're riveted in. They're so tight at the factory that I put my Torx, the proper size, in there, and I can't remember what it is, but let me just assure you it's very tiny, and it just immediately spun out. So that was the end of that. So I don't know why they're using such tiny torque screws on this. For looks, maybe that's fine, but you could have you know, given us a bigger wrench fitting in there, I think. Okay, just getting a little nitpicky now, but just trying to, I got 5 things I like, here's 5 that I don't, so here's number 3 that I don't. The pocket clip is not recessed. So, you know, the screws are in the pocket clip, but the pocket clip itself is not recessed into the handle. And that's not hard to do this day and age. I have a lot of knives that actually cost less than this that have made a nice clean cutout to recess that pocket clip. So I like the pocket clip. You know, it's deep carry. It is Cerakote coated, which is kind of cool. That's a very durable coating. And again, the screws are flush, but the clip itself is not flush there, and that would be a ding I would give it. Then finally, and this seems to be an ongoing thing with Buck, but I think the grind is just really crude. I mean, yes, the knife is extremely sharp, and I think the bevel's pretty even. But what are they sharpening that blade with? You know, it looks like 80 grit sandpaper or something. That is extremely toothy. So not too impressed there. And then this goes along with the grind. There's no sharpening choil. So that's just always been the way it is with these Bucks. I don't know why they don't put a sharpening choil there. They just don't. I would prefer to see one. Okay, guys, that's been the Buck 112 Ranger Sport, the modern version of their classic 112 Ranger. Overall, I really like the knife. If those few negative points that I brought up don't bother you too much, I do recommend it, especially if you could get it at a discounted price. I appreciate you guys, and thanks for watching.